Hello, guys and gals, and welcome to Elden Ring. Death is the price of admission. You might be asking me, what does that mean, death is the price of admission? Well, I wanted to do a review on Elden Ring, but I also wanted to kind of explain to people who may be interested in playing Elden Ring that Elden Ring is not necessarily a difficult game so much as it is a game that is designed around death. Most games will give you a indication that that would be a bad idea, right? You know, in Super Mario Brothers, when you're running along and you see spikes on the ground, you kind of get the idea in your head, hey, maybe these spikes are deadly. I should probably avoid them. But in Elden Ring, it's more akin to there's a patch of ground on the floor that looks absolutely safe. Let me walk on it. Oh, I'm dead. Looks like a boulder fell on my head. And I had absolutely no way of knowing that said boulder would fall on my head. In this way, Elden Ring is designed to kill you. And this is very important because a lot of people confuse difficulty with death. Death in Elden Ring is not the same as, say, death in Skyrim. If you died a whole bunch of times in Skyrim, then yes, you probably have done really poorly in Skyrim, because Skyrim kind of goes out of its way to tell you how to build your character, to teach you which ways to go, to show you quest locators, and all these other very interesting things, including providing for you a permanent minion that cannot die that you can use to your benefit. But Elden Ring doesn't do that. The boss fights are very, very restricted. You don't have any information about how this boss fight is. You go into a boss fight, and 9 times out of 10, you end up dying within the first couple of minutes because you've never seen the abilities that this boss uses. You will literally get your butt handed to you over and over again. And it's not because you're bad at the game, and it's not because the game is difficult. It's because the game is designed to kill you. They want you to have to go in there and bash your face into the wall so that you then therefore have to learn the boss's mechanics. And once you have learned the boss's mechanics, once you have gone through the process of paying the admission fee of death, you can have the knowledge at that point to continue and beat the boss. Now, of course, you can gain this knowledge in other ways besides dying. You can, of course, go on YouTube and you can watch videos, which is essentially cheating, right? Because you're essentially bypassing the mechanics of the game to obtain knowledge in a way other than what it was originally intended. You could, of course, also gain some of this knowledge from some of the previous From Software titles, like, for instance, Dark Souls 1, 2, and 3. As well as Sekiro, Bloodborne, and I can't remember the name of the first one, the very first one. Put it down in the comments for me if you want. But basically, if you have the knowledge, if you have the skill set in advance, the game becomes relatively easy. There was a very specific tale about Christopher Columbus, and Christopher Columbus told everyone at the table that he knew how to make an egg stand on end. And of course, making an egg stand on end is very difficult because eggs, of course, are oval in shape, and when you try and make them stand on end, they roll over or flop or whatever you want to call it, and it's very difficult. Well, Christopher Columbus knew exactly how to do it, and everyone tried at the table, and nobody could do it, and they all said that it was impossible. And Christopher Columbus did it right there in front of them, showed them how to do it, and after he showed them how to do it, everyone knew how to do it. The thing about Elden Ring is very similar to the egg story. You do not know how to do something, and it is difficult because you do not know how to do it. But once you learn, once you pay the price of admission, you then know how to do it, and then knowing how to do it is so much easier than it was before. I feel like we also need to talk about some other things about Elden Ring and Dark Souls games in particular, is that they are generally balanced around getting you killed. So it's not just necessarily that they're hiding the knowledge from you that you need, they are also balancing the game in such a way that it makes for a very difficult time. A very similar example to this would be Mario Brothers. In Mario, you have essentially 2 hits until you die, right? So if you are Big Mario, if you are the Mushroom Mario, you have 1 hit and you turn into the Small Mario. And if you happen to be Small Mario and you get hit, it's an instant death. And then on top of that, I think you can go one further with Mario, right? You could be a Flower Power Mario, or you can be a Raccoon Mario, and so forth and so on. So the most number of hits that you might possibly be able to take is 3. And it's in some ways Mario can be very difficult, especially if you have no power-ups, because 1 hit equals death. And Dark Souls, in very much the same way, is built around the idea of these monsters dish out massive amounts of damage. We've given you relatively no hit points, and we have essentially created a situation where you are going to die in relatively 1 to 2 hits. And early on in the game, one of the best things that you can do to fix this issue is put points into vigor. Because if you put a couple points into vigor right off the bat, you will increase your HP, which will buy you a little bit of leeway in terms of making mistakes. See, that's one of the biggest things about Elden Ring, is that it punishes mistakes by putting you in a situation where you will die in 1 or 2 hits. If you can take a hit and continue to fight, you can usually learn from your mistake and ever so slowly fix the problem that you've created. But if you cannot learn from your mistakes because you were instantly dead, then you have to run all the way back. You have to waste your time to get back to said monster. And then, of course, if you make another mistake, you are instantly dead. There are other things about Elden Ring which are a little bit complicated as well. Like, for instance, the weapons and the armor are very simple. A lot of people get confused in the beginning, and they think that they need to get their hands on stronger armor or stronger weapons, and quite honestly, it's just not the case. In Elden Ring, unlike in other games, except for Dark Souls games, the armor is relatively unimportant. I won't say that it is completely unimportant, but you can pretty much beat the game naked if that's what you wish. The weapons, on the other hand, there is no specific reason why you need to have any particular weapon over another. In fact, just about any weapon in the game can be viable if you would like it to be so. If you want to use a katana, there are katanas for you to use. If you would like to use an axe or a giant dragon's tooth or whatever it is, whatever weapon that you think is cool, I guarantee you there are weapons in the game that you can use to your advantage. When it comes to weapons, what you're really looking at, instead of trying to figure out which one does the most damage or which one has the right effect that you would like, what you really want to look at is the moveset of the weapon. Figure out which weapons have the moveset that you would particularly like to have. For instance, if you see, I have chosen a halberd, and the halberd is a very effective weapon on horseback. It also works very, very well in person, so I can have a stabbing attack, a nice stab, and I have also a sweep. I find the halberd to be a very effective weapon because I have both a stab and a sweep. Some weapons are only sweeps. Some weapons are only stabs. Some weapons are only overhead bashes, and so forth and so on. So I would recommend that if you are interested in choosing a weapon, put the weapon on, play around with its moveset, and see if you like the way that the weapon attacks. Other than the moveset, there are some weapons that specifically have locked abilities, and those locked abilities can be very, very handy. However, the majority of the basic weapons in the game do not have locked abilities, and they can actually be transferred to other weapons. There are basically abilities that are called Ashes of War, and the Ashes of War can be equipped to basically any basic weapon in the game. So if you do happen to choose a basic weapon as your main weapon, like for instance a halberd, you can of course upgrade that halberd to a higher level to get more damage, and you can also equip it with the ash that you would like. There are ashes that do elemental damage like fire, lightning, and ice. There are ashes that do holy damage. There are physical ashes. There are blood ashes, all sorts of crazy things that you can find all throughout the world, and very, very fun to play around with these things. The bosses are very, very fun to fight. This one in particular that's behind me right now is the fire giant, and yes, he just ripped off his own foot. I fought this fire giant probably for about an hour before I was able to finally defeat him, and it was a very, very fun fight indeed. Um, I had a little bit of trouble with some of the moves and the horse in particular, because the horse is a little bit difficult to handle in these situations, but that's okay. So back to Elden Ring and a review of Elden Ring. Now, do I think that Elden Ring is a good game? Yes, I do. Do I think that Elden Ring is worth purchasing? Yes, I do. Are there some issues with Elden Ring? Yes, there are. As of currently, there is an issue with the roll, which is basically your main dodge. It's the main way that you avoid damage. I have noticed in quite a few of my game playthroughs. I have 12 different videos at this point of live streams, and I have done pretty much every boss in the game except for like the last couple. I even went around and did most of the side quests first, although I'm sure I've missed a couple here and there. And what I've noticed is that the roll has a very bad input delay on it, and on the PC especially, I've also noticed that there is a lot of stuttering as well. And the stuttering you can actually see in a lot of my clips, although it may seem like live stream stuttering, it is actually the game physically stuttering. Basically, what is happening on the PC, as far as I can tell, is the PC is literally just stopping frames for maybe about 1 second or about a half a second. Everything goes down to about 0 FPS. And during that time frame, it becomes very difficult to look or see or do anything in Elden Ring because you are essentially stuck, unable to see anything like a blind man for that brief duration of the stutter. And you have to imagine that when a boss is swinging a giant weapon at your forehead, it can be very daunting for the screen to simply stop performing for that period of time. Now, I have tried many, many fixes for this particular issue, and unfortunately, I have not been able to solve the issue as of yet. There is no specific way to fix it at this point. I'm assuming it has to be some sort of issue from software side that needs to be fixed via a software patch. Although we've had several patches so far, and they've not been effective. Speaking of patches, it does seem like they are keeping up with the game, and they have, in fact, done several patches so far to balance out ashes and weapons and things like that. Like, for instance, the Hoarfrost ability was actually pretty broken, especially if you had not built into it. And this is something that I'm glad that they took a look at. When you level up your character, the game is, quite honestly, very rewarding in that aspect, because as you level up, you gain a lot of strength. You can obviously build into any particular element that you would like to build into. Like maybe you would like to be a strength-based character or a dex-based character. Maybe you want to be an intelligence-based character or an arc-based character. There are weapons that scale off of pretty much any attribute that you would like them to scale off of. And what you can do is you can actually pick a weapon based off of the scaling attributes, or you can pick an ash based off of the scaling attributes. Now, when you choose an ash for a weapon, you actually get to choose the type of scaling that I fell off. Actually get to choose the type of scaling that you get. So, for instance, a quality scaled item is strength and dex. A heavy is strength only, and so forth and so on. Usually, if you have an elemental ash, there is an elemental choice. Like you can choose fire, and that will probably scale off of its particular element, like intelligence. All of this comes together to form a really amazing picture of a very fun game. One of the other aspects of Elden Ring, which was not present in Dark Souls 1, 2, or 3, is the massive open world aspect of Elden Ring. When I originally started playing, I didn't really quite understand just how vast and just how massive Elden Ring is. And it really is massive. As I explored more and more and more, I got to the point where I would just be like, wow, is there more? Is that it? Is that all I've discovered so far? And then I would get to a new area and a new zone would open up, and I would just be like, okay, wow, that's even more than I had before. And in each zone are all these little catacombs and caves and boss zones, and not only that, but there are also these nighttime events specifically for certain bosses. I actually have one of those right here. There is a boss. It's called the dead bird or something along those lines. I'm sure I'm messing it up, but it was a very interesting boss, and basically the boss only appeared during the nighttime. And there was pretty much nothing that I could do except for wait until night to fight that particular boss, and I thought that was just really cool. Here he is, the Death Bird. And this particular one is one of the night-only creatures. To fight him, you've got to sit at the campfire, and you actually have to wait until nighttime for him to spawn. If you go up here during the daytime or any other time besides night, nothing happens. And there are quite a few of these in the game. Very, very, very fun to have monsters like this that are very, very specific to a time frame. There is also a lot of quests involved in the game. Very, very large number of dialogue options between NPCs, talking to certain NPCs and getting them to go further. And one of the things that I absolutely love about Elden Ring is that it doesn't hold your hand, and it doesn't tell you where to go, and it doesn't tell you who to talk to, and it doesn't tell you everything that you need. It doesn't baby you like a mother protecting her child. You have to put the pieces together yourself. You have to use your brain and find out where you need to go. You need to pay attention to the details, and in the details, you will find what you need to find. When somebody mentions somebody's name, you pay attention to that and you go talk to them, and sure enough, there will be a dialogue option there for you to talk to them. As I explored deeper and deeper into the game, I started to realize that the story of this game is just absolutely massive, and it's a very interesting story revolving around the Erd Tree. And of course, I won't spoil anything for you because this is not meant to be a spoiler. This is more meant to be a review of Elden Ring. And maybe after watching this, maybe you will go pick it up and buy it for yourself. Now, a lot of people have been talking about an easy mode for the game, and I want you to know that it would completely ruin what Elden Ring is. It's not about difficulty in Elden Ring. It's about learning and patience. All you need to know is that if you are willing to take the time to learn, if you're willing to take the time to die, as I said, death is the price of admission, you will do fairly well in Elden Ring. And I feel like it is a very rewarding experience as well, because as you become better at the game, as you learn the boss fights, as you beat each boss, you will get that very awesome sense of self-satisfaction. Now, are there bad things about Elden Ring? I've talked about the glitches, but are there bad elements of Elden Ring? Well, in the original Dark Souls, there was a lot of issues revolving around the placement of the bonfires, which is basically your checkpoints. And the placement of those bonfires were not the greatest. A lot of the times, the game forced you to run back to a zone, and that running back to the zone was just an absolute waste of your time. And I do want to kind of stress this because the waste of time that was involved in Dark Souls 1 was absolutely massive and annoying. And Dark Souls 2 and 3 sort of fixed that issue, but I haven't really seen that issue in Elden Ring for the most part. I've noticed that in Elden Ring, there is a severe lack of that. Now, I did encounter it once or twice in certain zones where I was forced to run all the way back through just the silliest monsters to get to the next, bonfire. But I think the number of occurrences of that was relatively low. I do think that there is some issues in the game revolving around specific order of quest objectives. I had a couple times where I completely missed out on a quest objective that was kind of required, just simply because I had absolutely no clue that it existed. It's not that I want them to hold my hand or anything. Don't get me wrong. I actually was just applauding the fact that the game does not hold your hand. However, I can't help but think that if there is something that is so important that I should not miss it, that maybe there should be something there to kind of egg me on in the direction that I'm supposed to go. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't want a giant indicator on the screen, but maybe just, something glowy in the distance, or something obvious that would have grabbed my attention and said, hey, you probably need to go over here. But instead, it was just something that was obscure and hidden, that was kind of required to continue through the game. One of the things that I missed right off the bat, specifically because of the giant tree sentinel that was in the way, was the silver summoning bell for the spirits. And since I missed out on the spirits were unfortunately not summonable by me for quite some time in the game, and it wasn't until many, many hours later in the game that I was actually able to find the bell and summon them, which was rather silly. I do feel like some things could be better explained in Elden Ring, instead of leaving absolutely everything to our discovery. It would be nice if some things were explained. Maybe even just some of the very simple things like how the weapons work and how the ashes work and so forth and so on. Because they really just kind of throw you into the deep end like a person at work who has just, I don't even know how to put it. Like say it's your first day on the job, and literally your first day on the job, they just throw you into the deep end, and they don't tell you how to do your job. They don't give you any training, and you're just over there floundering about trying to figure out what to do, and you're just doing your best. You're just doing your best. And that's Elden Ring in a nutshell. You hop in and you just do your best, and you probably fail a bunch, but eventually you catch on. It's sink or swim, right? So I know the review has been going for a little while, but I'd like to make this a thorough review for those of you who are interested in potentially buying the game. The next thing I'd like to do is take you into the game and show you some of the stuff and talk about some of the abilities. All right, so here we are in not Dark Souls. Funny. Elden Ring. It might as well be Dark Souls 4 as far as I'm concerned. And in Elden Ring, one of the things that you've got to know is how to level up your character. So leveling up your character is done at bonfires, and you have to use your runes. As you can see, it cost me 90,000 runes to upgrade my level. You can, of course, go through some other things, and you can equip ashes to your weapons. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can see I have a rather large amount of weapons. Very, very large amount of weapons. And if you go into these weapons and you take a look at them, I was telling you guys earlier about how each one scales differently. So you notice that this one scales C strength, E dex. This one is D strength, D dex. This one here is strictly strength. It is a beastman cleaver, and so forth and so on. And as you go forward and you look at these items, you will find very quickly that these items are very specific to certain builds. Another thing that needs to be talked about is classes. The classes don't really matter that much, because your class is really kind of decided by your character, how you build your character. If you build your character a certain way, you will be that certain kind of character. The starting classes really are just there to give you kind of like an item that you might particularly want and sort of customize your stats a little bit toward the direction you might want to go. But as you level up your character, you get to decide where those points go, and by deciding where those points go, you are going to make the decision of what kind of character you will be. If you end up leveling up intelligence and mind, you're going to be more of a sorcerer or a sorceress. If you level up vigor and strength, you're going to be more of a melee character, and so forth and so on. If you level up endurance, you'll be able to equip higher and heavier armors, and you'll be very tanky. Equip load is a very big aspect of Dark Souls and Elden Ring's games, and because equip load is so important, you definitely have to make sure that you have the equipment that you would specifically want for the character that you want it for. And to give you an idea of the kind of equipment that you have to look forward to, I'd like to show you all of the equipment that I have. This isn't really so much a spoiler as just simply giving you an idea of how many different weapons and how many different pieces of armor and equipment there are in the game. And I don't actually have them all, believe it or not. That is just the weapons, and this is the bows and the staffs. And then this is the shields. I have quite a large number of shields. We also have quite a large number of hats, armor, just a ton of items in the game in general that have to do with a lot of stuff. Talismans are also a way that you can customize your character even further. So eventually, you will start out with 2 talisman slots, but eventually you will end up with 4, and you will be able to equip a large number of talismans, which have a myriad of effects, which will help out your character in a myriad of ways. Basically making you either tankier, stronger, more HP, more damage, higher negation values for specific elements, all sorts of different ways that you can customize your character and make them your own specific character of your own devising. And that's one of the beautiful things about Dark Souls is you can pretty much do whatever you want and make whatever character you want. If you want to make a character, a crazy character that uses a ghost flame torch, well then more power to you. If you want to wield a literal pillory shield, which is what the blockades, like the guy who's got his arms in his head, and you can do that. You can literally equip some of the craziest items in the game. I mean, I've got this one item which is literally a jaw beast. Literally the jaw of a beast, and it is so freaking cool looking, but it's just the most massive, ridiculous looking weapon. And as you can see, the moveset is very slow. A lot of slams, not a lot of pierces or slashes. It's pretty much just entirely slam abilities. And of course, it also has some other special abilities on it too. And I mean, there's even crazy weapons like this Giza's wheel, which is just kind of nuts. And it's like a freaking chainsaw. I don't even understand. I mean, it looks really cool though, and you could totally build a character around this. What would I rate the game if I had to rate the game? I would probably rate the game a 9 out of 10. As of right now, because of the issues with the lagging, the roll lag, the input lag on the controller, and also the issues with the frame stuttering on PC, I have to take off at least 1 point for that. But overall, if they fixed the roll issues and they fixed the stuttering problems, I would totally give this a 10 out of a 10. As you can see, this is a ginormous map of the world, and this is one particular zone over here called Caelid. This is the starter zone and the starter castle, and then you move up here into this area, and there's a huge swamp, and I mean, we've got more castles, the capital. There's literally a giant area for mountainous trolls. I don't even think I've been up here to this area. I'm not sure what this is because it's blacked out. And then they have this area here, which is like up in the sky, and it's just absolutely massive in terms of riding around and just having fun and killing things and doing your best to be a a knight. What is your actual purpose? Well, that's part of the story, and I feel like that's something that we need to not discuss. If you enjoy games like Skyrim, if you enjoy, games where you have to use your brain and you have to think, if you like older style games like Baldur's Gate, where they didn't always give you quest locators and objective notifiers and everything like that, if you enjoy, figuring out boss fights, this is the kind of game for you. One last thing I'll leave you with is that if you've ever played an MMO like Final Fantasy XI or World of Warcraft, or Lord of the Rings Online, or God, there's so many. I'll leave this piece of information with you. If you've ever done a raid, if you've ever done, a high-level dungeon, and it's taken your group a while to learn this dungeon, maybe you spent the last 2 weeks on a high-level raid, and you're trying to train up all of the people in your group to have the knowledge and the ability to defeat this boss, and eventually you do. Eventually you defeat this boss, and everybody knows how to do it. And once you learn, it's easy, and you start farming the boss every week, and you literally gear up all of your team. Everybody's got the shining plate of the gods that comes from this particular boss, and you move on to the next raid, and it is difficult. You have a slog. You move in for maybe like a week or 2 weeks until you guys master the raid, and once you master it, again, you have the ability to farm this at will. Elden Ring is very, very similar to this in many regards. A lot of these bosses take time to learn, and until you learn how to actually defeat these bosses, they will be difficult. But it's not because you can't, and it's not because you don't have the ability, and it's not because they're difficult. It's just like an MMO in that you need to learn. You need to take the time to figure out where to stand. You need to take the time to figure out which way to dodge. You need to take the time to figure out that Phase 2 is very deadly and I need to stay at range, or Phase 1 is very deadly but he has lots of ranged abilities and I need to stay close to him so that I can dodge these ranged abilities easier. There are all these little tiny intricate mechanics that each particular boss has, and as you learn these mechanics, you will become better and better at Elden Ring. And for that reason, that is why I give Elden Ring a 9 out of 10. Because I do feel like Elden Ring is, quite honestly, a masterpiece of a game. As always, I do appreciate you guys and gals watching my videos, and I hope that you guys will take the chance on Elden Ring and have some fun. If you ever need some help on any particular boss, feel free to hit me up, and I will give you some information. I'll shoot you my strategy on that particular boss, and I will do my best to give you a hand. Maybe even if I'm online, you can summon me, perhaps. And as always, keep watching.